This is Digital Voices with Beau Tiffany. Inspiring and providing real insight to our listeners with every story. Exploring deep stories behind every guest. Please welcome your host, Beau Tiffany.
Chris, thanks for coming back on Digital Voices. How you doing?
I appreciate you having me back. I'm doing great, man. I'm doing real good. Things are going well. You know, there's a strike out in Hollywood now. They're shutting everything down. But fortunately, I've got a few irons in the fire. Not only Hollywood irons, but a couple other things going on to keep me busy. So I can't complain.
Great. You know, it's been a couple of years since we talked last. What have you been up to? Recent projects? What's new with you?
Probably one of the biggest things I started shifting toward is working on some of my own stuff. I am a writer in addition to being an actor, a voiceover guy. So, and I've produced some things, I've directed some things. And when you're multi-hyphenate, as they call it now, rather than wearing different hats, it does get interesting. But what it also provides you is your kind of seed to plate, your idea to screen, if you will, of opportunities to move something forward. And that's what I've really gotten concentrated, probably deep into COVID. Again, since we weren't shooting a lot, I really turned back toward my writing, which I'd gotten away from for a while. Pulled a few feature screenplays off the shelf, dusted them off, did some rewrites, wrote two new features and a pilot, turned one feature into a pilot that I had. And then at that point, too, I started pitching to some executives in Hollywood and really putting myself out there. Up until that point as a writer, I hadn't necessarily thrown myself to the wolves, and I did for a solid 2 years. And I feel like I really not only knocked the dust off my writing tool, but really started to sharpen it real well, because you're talking to people, on a regular basis who are definitely greenlighting things and putting money to things and finding out what sells, what genres sell, who's buying what an audience is going to listen to. And it gets interesting, though. As an artist, you have to put that in its place, because if you continue to listen to that all the time, you probably won't want to write stories, because what happens there is you start mixing in the business of art. And that can be a little disheartening as an artist if you don't kind of have that, if you haven't galvanized yourself as an artist yet. So, but going back to what I've been working on. So yeah, working on those older stories and making them fresh, getting some new stories going. And then most recently, what that's led up to is I've got a writing partner of mine, co-producer as well, that we are working on, and we're getting behind a whole bunch of short form content. So give you a little history. You folks know Hollywood a little bit. Jeffrey Katzenberg started Quibi. And unfortunately, I think with Quibi, what happened was, quote, COVID. Katzenberg is part of DreamWorks. So the guy knows what he's doing. He's a billionaire. So it's not like this guy took 30 years of experience or 40 years of experience and went, let me just crap this out and, hope it works. I think he definitely had the right play at the wrong time. I watched Die Hard. I watched the Endgame or whatever it is with the Chris or Liam Hemsworth. The guy had some solid content on there in the short form variety. And I got really interested, and all of a sudden, bam, they folded, and then they sold to Roku. I still saw something there, right? And then it hit me 3 or 4 months ago when I saw that Roku believed in enough, not only to buy the content, but to actually fund the second season of Die Hard. Now, granted, I know Kevin Hart's behind that, and there was probably some money from somewhere else. But point being is, I feel like Quibi took the whole short form, they took the web series and they added some Frank's hot sauce on it, if that makes sense. Because now the short form, referring to it that way, gives it a different perspective. And again, the way people are consuming content right now, I think is a smart move for me and my partner to go. So the point being is, we just wrapped post-production on the first episode. We're in pre-production for the second episode of an idea that we had called Assassin's Guild of America. And it's basically taking it's like taking John Wick and Lethal Weapon and they had a baby. It's definitely a hat tip to Mr. Wick, but not in such a serious way. It's not slapstick, so to speak, but it's definitely got its dark comedy to it that we want to we want to play lighter too. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Mr. Right. It's a great dark comedy about a hitman. It has
I
Sam
haven't seen
Rockwell in
that
it.
one.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sam Rockwell and Anna Kendrick are the couple, and it's basically a rom-com hitman show. It's pretty funny to watch, but it has that kind of thing, the lucky number 11, the smoking aces kind of thing to it. We play to the camera, we break the fourth wall. So we're having fun with it. And what I really like about it is we control the process from, like I said, idea to screen. We've got it submitted to a few festivals at the moment. But that's the biggest thing I've been moving toward is not only working on creating my own ideas, but making the ideas come to life without having to wait on Hollywood as much.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing I've been working on. And then the second thing is we can get into a little bit later, but you can see my hat here says, oh, let me turn the right way there. It says BA. I launched a clothing brand about 5 years ago called My Life is War, and things didn't work out quite like that. So I pulled it back a little bit, did a lot of research, did a lot of soul searching, and I definitely wanted my brand to support who I was as an entertainer. So I rebranded it as Badass Original, and that's kind of how I brand myself as an artist. And it's come together very well. We have a relaunch date, rebranding relaunch date of August 7th. So this is actually the hat we're going to be coming out with, and then we have a couple shirts and some things that are coming along initially. We're going to start small, not big and huge. We're going to see how the tribe enjoys it. But really what it is, it's a mission-driven brand. I really want to get people on board because I believe everybody's got a badass original inside of them. I think we're all born with a purpose, reason that we're here, because if we weren't, one, why are we here? And two, why are we individuals and not a whole collective? That's my question right there. And if you're an individual, you were put here for a reason. And, I get encouraged when I see the gleam in people's eye when they start talking about their dream. But a lot of people have neither dreamed or dreamed enough, or they've had it suppressed for so long they can't remember it. And it breaks my heart, man. So hopefully what I want to do with this brand and this push is just to talk to people's spirit in general. I'm gonna start putting some content out there in general. Me just talking bullshit, if anything, and then if you feel or resonate with it, I'm giving you some things to tie you into the brand or the tribe, hats, shirts, things like that, hoodies that are kind of your badass original armor, if you will, or it's a relatability to folks, kind of like the hat tip to Fight Club, if you will. Don't talk about Fight Club. If you see that black eye, you get that wink, you know who you are. You know what it's about. So those are the two big things I've been working on recently.
Love it. When we first talked, we dove into the history, where you're from, how you got to Hollywood. And it's kind of a culmination of these tools that you put in your toolbox that are really coming together and starting to see the seeds that you planted along the way really take off in ways that you didn't anticipate. And it's exciting from the outside person looking in. I can only imagine what it's like in your shoes. I find that when you're in a synergistic place and where you need to be, it's a great feeling. And I think that's where you're at right now.
It gets tricky, man. You get punched in the throat and kicked in the balls a lot, and you wonder if you're going in the right direction. Sometimes you feel like you're walking in circles in the desert, and it's eventually an oasis, if you will, or a bottle of water shows up, and you're like, okay, I'm probably going in the right way. And it takes a long time. I mean, I think I had a thought today that literally I was sitting there. My wife and I had gone out on a couple errands, and I was sitting there waiting on her, and it came to me. I don't know what made me think I'm people watching. When I do that, I always people watch. It helps me with my acting career. You're like, how'd you do that? Well, I go out, grab a coffee, and I just watch people. I listen to people, I watch people. I listen to people, I watch people. And you catch a lot of things. And I saw this one guy really struggling to put something from his cart in the car, but that's the only way he could do it. And what came to mind was to move the mountain, you have to move the mountain. I mean, everybody's always looking for the red pill, the blue pill, whatever. That's not the case, man. I mean, if you want to become a champion at anything, you're going to get your ass whooped before you ever hoist the trophy. That's the only way it works. And so I feel like I've taken quite a few ass whoopings over the years. So a little glory is good to taste, I guess you would say. So, yeah, I feel real good about the launch of the of the brand and what I'm seeing. I know you reached out to me. What I'm seeing too is a couple of people have reached back out to me over the years talking about, hey man, what you said and what you put out there, really helps me. I enjoy that because I pulled back from that for a while because to tell you the truth, I didn't know if it was doing any good or not. But I like to watch. I follow a lot of aggressive, motivational guys, if you will. David Goggins, Wes Watson, those kind of guys who are kind of no bullshit kind of guys. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And Wes Watson was doing an interview one day and he was talking about, kind of why do you get up at 3:30 every day? And he's done it for 10 or 15 years. And this is a guy who did 10 years in maximum security prison. And he looks like he did 10 years in maximum security prison. I mean, he's tatted from his neck down, everything else. But the guy said, look, I get up every morning because I know what I went through and made it through. And he goes, what I want for others out there is if I miss a day of doing that, then I've let someone out there down from having what they can have out of life. So in that same vein, that's what I hope Badass Original accomplishes. And so me coming back around and creating some of that content, and there will be some memes out there like I've had in the past, but really what I want to do is get more on screen and talk more content about what you can do to overcome what you need to overcome to become what you want to become, if that makes sense. So yeah, it feels good that people are resonating with it even before it comes out. It's almost like the universe is telling them something's coming because something's coming. I promise you that.
Yeah, like minds are like-minded, and so we resonate with each other. I like the mindset because it's garbage in, garbage out, and it's a mindset that propels you through a day. And I think given the right mindset, you can accomplish almost darn near anything. I do find a lot of people just don't have that drive, and I call them the sheeple. You probably heard that before. And we wait, or we're in this woke culture, and I think it's because people like you and I are shaking people, trying to wake them up and get them interested. We've been kind of gone through the ringer as a country in the last decade or two, and so as we're fighting for the right place of mind and right mental health, which is another subject I've been dealing with a lot on my show, that mindset really comes into play and helpful. I know for me, uh, waking up and just having that routine, and some people, make a speech to themselves like, "All right, we're going to go do this today." Whatever pumps you up, other than just coffee. But that I think that routine tends to ignite the fire that lasts throughout the rest of the day. Just to make that point.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, man. I mean, you need to find what works for you. I mean, there are all kinds with the world nowadays and what's offered to us on the internet, which is pretty much the history of the world. It's not that you can't find something that can help you. It's finding that thing or those things that help you and then finding them, applying them in the right order, which is going to get, again, it's going to take you moving the mountain, rock by fucking rock. As they say, the saying goes, before enlightenment or chop wood, carry water. Before enlightenment, after enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. I mean, it's going to be what it's going to be. I think a big thing that folks have to do, and I remember going back when I was a sophomore in college, going back to my high school and talking to some kids. And the big thing about that, at least back then, when college was kind of important to go to, now it's like, well, do you need to go? Do you need not to go? Is kids got so caught up in where they got accepted to. And I went to 4 different colleges before I finished, and I didn't finish with a degree yet. That's one of the things on my to-do list still to go. But I was going to go to the University of Texas or University of North Texas to start with, and I couldn't go the first semester, so I went to a local community college where I lived, and then I went the second semester, and you know what? It actually wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So I came back home, went to the community college there. And then my dad was in the military. So his last tour of duty was in Fort Bliss, which is in El Paso. So I went out there, went to University of Texas, El Paso for a year and a half, and then came up and finished up at the University of Texas at Austin. And I did not finish there. But the point being is, even if I wanted to go to UT at the beginning, and I didn't get in, on your degree, it doesn't say where you started.
Right.
It says where you finished. And they got so caught up in that. And I remember talking to them about that. And this one kid told me, he goes, well, what if, I said, very important in my life. I've got my mother and father and my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, is behind me. And the kid says, what if you don't have anybody behind you? Well, in the end, you have to learn to fight alone. That's it. You come into the world alone, you leave it alone. And in between, you better learn how to fight alone if you want to make that ember that burns inside of you turn into an inferno, right? Well, you do have to have some help. So again, the internet is available to us, and how to find help is easy. Just Google, how can I do this? There are going to be countless numbers of people out there, and you may have to go to a few coaches before you find the one who resonates. But there's a lot of free material. Hop on YouTube, type in motivation, and just listen to that every day. If you have to lean into that, just as the one thing that you do. But you're going to need some help. You're not going to be able to do it alone. You have to do a lot of the grunt work by yourself, but you don't have to do it alone. And, I'm hoping that Badass Original kind of slides into that space where people can come online and hear me say something or hear something that I share that motivates them, that stokes the fire, that gets them off their ass or pulls them away from doing something like possibly considering taking their own life. I mean, that's something you never want to hear somebody do, to feel like their life is, worthless, for a better way to put it. So, it's I think it's important to find your tribe, whoever that is. I don't care if it's a tribe of one or two or tribe of millions, whoever resonates with you and then excites you to get out of bed every morning, stick around them. And in that same vein too, as they say, you've heard this in the past, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. So go around and get around people who push you, who get you out of your comfort zone, because comfort kills. Comfort kills. It does. And so you want to be challenged to be better. That's the only way you're going to get better. And or you're not. And I don't mean that lightly. Or you're going to choose not to be that. And your life is going to be what you choose it. The one thing I would say too is go put yourself on life. Don't let it put itself on you, because it will make a decision. It will make your decisions for you. And most of them you probably won't enjoy.
I tried to figure out what lit that fire underneath you, because you are a rarity, my friend. And I think it's also a shining light and a beacon to many. So I know that you said you had a coach. I know that, there were certain things that we talked about in our last episode, but without going into those depths, let me just say your fire is intense and I love it. So, circling this back around to career and such, all these tools in the toolbox, your screenwriting, voiceover work, acting, you have just, you're a beast, really. And, one thing that I find that's true about you and resonates is this adaptability about you. You almost approach it militaristically. If you do, and then you analyze, and then you adjust, and then you approach it again, and this is kind of like a repetitive cycle, and it helps you to hone your craft and where you're going. Did I hit that on the head, or is there more to it than that for you?
No, I agree with you. I mean, my dad was in the military for 20 years. I was around a military environment my whole childhood. So it's going to become part of your DNA, whether you like it or not. I think
it's a great thing.
Yeah, I think two things made me who I am today, or at least laid the bedrock. One was being around the military environment, and then two was being a football player in the state of Texas. I played Texas high school football, and it's just taken very seriously here. It is a religion. There's no doubt about that. And what those coaches demanded of you. So let me digress a little bit. I actually think every child should be part of some competitive team sport. I actually do. I think it builds a spirit in you, and it galvanizes it, that and a seed in you that actually turns you into something that you want to be in the future. And especially if you take that seriously, I contribute a lot to my high school coaches. That from not only football, when I played basketball, wrestled, powerlifted, and things like that. I mean, I can remember every coach that taught me that, and those guys demanded the best from you. They wanted the best you could give, not the best necessarily that existed, but they wanted your best, and they saw things in you couldn't see. So that's why it's important to have a coach. I mean, you could go down the line. I can guarantee you there's not an Olympic athlete in the history of the Olympics with a gold medal around their neck that didn't have a coach. They didn't coach themselves to an Olympic gold medal. They had to seek out someone's help who pushed them past what they could see. And that's why it's important, I think, to get around a tribe, whoever it is, whether you pay a coach, and yes, that has to happen. You have to put skin in the game because God or the universe will not recognize your commitment unless you're willing to go that far. But putting yourself around a coach who will push you, paying them, putting yourself around individuals in a team setting or group setting that will kind of demand the best and not let you off the hook. That's what I believe started the fire in me. They got the kindling burning. The other thing I learned from being in that environment, and I'm not going to contribute this because it's a little self-centered, and I'm going to, again, I told you earlier, I'm going to be as transparent as I possibly can. To chase the thing you want and to really try to blow past any barrier or quiet any noise is to truly believe that you are the best on the planet, or really the best who's ever lived who does this. Now, objectively, maybe that's not the truth. I got that. But if you don't believe it in your spirit and your heart, you're never going to go past the first obstacle, much less the last obstacle. And I tell people, look at this face, look at this body, listen to this voice. It should have never accomplished most of the stuff that you see behind me. It should have never been in all these things. But sometimes you have to build, or you have to bend the universe to your will, if that makes sense. And it's hard to do that if you don't have the confidence in yourself to do that, if you can't see the future. And I'm a big dreamer. My wife has to kind of pull me down to earth sometimes, because if it's ever been done once, it can be done again. And even if it hasn't, here we go. Go create it yourself. But what built that in me, and you said you said it earlier, you felt like I was a beast, and I appreciate that compliment. But the only way I think to become that is to get around a tribe who uplifts you and then believe what you're capable of doing. And I mean, that's kind of what got behind this whole recent thing of me creating my own thing, because really what I want Hollywood to do is come chasing me.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I believe. If you stop and start creating your own fire, the people or the things that you've been chasing will stop, turn around, and start hovering around you, because now you've created something. You've created value. And that's the other thing, too, I want to mention is, if you want to seat at this big table called success, when you walk up to an open chair, and there's a lot of open chairs, they don't automatically unlock unless you bring value. If you're coming to the table with something of value, whether you put in time in to build a skill, you have money or whatever it may be, that's going to unlock the chair for you. But if you just want to come in because you want to come in, those chairs aren't going to unlock for you. And nobody can unlock them but you by bringing in true value.
Yeah, you got to put in the work, right? Nothing in life is free. And those tools in the toolbox don't get there by themselves, Carpenter doesn't go on the job and build a house and not know how to do it and not have the tools to do it with. So I appreciate that a lot. Career reflection, circling this back a little bit more towards the Hollywood aspects. Your roles that you've been pushed, or I guess reflecting back on your career, looking at the growth that we're just talking about, developing that badass persona and those skills in the toolbox. Were there times that you felt pushed out of your comfort zone, and how did you deal with that?
Well, when you first start acting, so I had never considered the way I look or nationality, ethnicity, or anything before I started becoming an actor. And then when you do, the world sees you in a specific way. And the best acting class I ever took was from a guy named Sam Christensen. He passed away about 4 or 5 years ago. But he created what's called the image process. And within the image process, he took and developed a system that the old studios used to use that helps you understand how society views you. Your height, your weight, shape of your face. Do you have hair, facial hair or not? The sound of your voice, where they think you're from. That's a big one for me. I'll get into that in just a second. But what it helps you do then is to turn around and utilize those skills to market yourself, because we as actors now aren't part of a studio system. We're all independent contractors. But in the studio system, where Sam learned this, is they had this department, kind of the the fan department, a fan mail department. They bring all the fan mail in, and you could have as much as a drawer with a folder or a whole warehouse, depending on who you were, how popular were. And they would read all these fan letters, and then they would pick out keywords. Obviously, I don't know if they call them keywords back then, but they would pick out all this information that kept repeating itself on what they loved about these actors and actresses. And then they would keep putting them in those movies, and those fans would keep going to see those movies because that's what they love to see. Well, what Sam developed over time is, hey, since you need to take this information out and promote yourself or market yourself, this is how the world sees you. And the very first activity he does in this 4-day intensive is you sit in a chair in front of a group of folks, usually no more than 10, and he gives everybody about a sheet of about 100 adjectives. And all they do is check off what they see and feel. And they're judging you. That's what they're doing. And it's okay. You know, some people aren't good with that. But as actors, you have to be comfortable because I'm being judged right now. It's okay. What do I see? What do I feel? What do I hear? And then those one letters or the one word adjectives grow into phrases that you use now to describe yourself. So for me, I'd be the kid in the candy store is also the bull in the china shop. How you doing? Chris Warner, nice to meet you. And what that does is allow people, I mean, see how deep that is of a description of me instead of saying, I'm just Chris Warner, I play a tough guy. Right. Well, that's pretty flat. But if I say, hey, this is who I am and what I do, this is who I am, not what I do, it gives people a better understanding of who you are and where you're coming from. With that said, I'm a pretty big dude, husky kind of guy. I've got a fairly deep voice. I have a kind of an intimidating presence, if you will. So those kind of roles are going to come up. I'm usually cast as a cop or a military guy or a convict or a bad guy a lot of times. So if I disagree with how the world sees me, then it's my responsibility to change that, right? I never had an issue of where I got cast. I was, as a younger actor, I was so just glad to be cast. But as you move forward and you understand how the world sees you and what roles you're getting and trying to use that as leverage to move into roles you want, then you know, okay, I can only go so far out of the perimeters of what people see me as right now without changing something big. I might have mentioned this last time, but it's a story of Paul Newman. They interviewed him one time when he was Paul Newman at his height. And they said, what do you think makes Paul Newman Paul Newman? He goes, well, I do 2 for God and 1 for me. And he said, well, what does that mean? Well, I do 2 movies within the parameters that you see me in, right? That you are fans of. The badass guy, the sexy guy who drives the car faster, things like that. And then I go off and do this Tree on the Moon artsy thing. And by the time that comes out, I'm already back on set doing the 1 for you because you're going, what the hell's Paul doing over here playing a tree on the moon, right? He doesn't give you enough time to figure that out because he knows the 2 for you are going to make the money and keep the career going and keep him in the public eye. But as an artist, he might have wanted to do that one small role forever, but he couldn't do it until he became this guy because he didn't have the leverage to go there. So that's kind of how it works with almost everybody's career, even the people who start young, is if you don't play and grow a fan base from the characters that they see you as, you will never get big enough or popular enough or whatever you want to call it to be able to do those, my left foot roles that Daniel Day-Lewis does, or Primal Fear that Edward Norton did, or, Gary Oldman doing, lose my chain of thought here. The British Prime Minister. Finally won the Oscar.
I didn't watch that one. Sorry.
No. But the point being is we all have to understand and accept the things that we're doing and then learn to do those well. Be okay with that. And then learn to do them very, very well. And you become very good at that. So when people call, hey, Chris Warner become a pretty good character actor of his generation, things like that, it's okay because who wins the Oscars most of the time? Right. Character actors do. Or the good-looking people have to make themselves so ugly that you believe them as a character actor, and then they're holding the Oscar in their hand. But if you aren't comfortable with how the world sees you and what you are portraying or they're perceiving, then it's up to you as an artist to change that. So if I wanted to be known as the skinny, nerdy guy, then I would have to lose a lot of weight and start doing things and dressing a certain way and sounding a certain way for folks to believe me that way. But what people don't understand is if I haven't built enough leverage as this guy, I'm going back to ground zero.
Right.
I'm not just going laterally and they're like, oh, Chris. And if you knock that role out of the park, then you're respected like Tom Hanks, where he can play this and that and that and this. And wow, he's so versatile. Yeah, because he came up as Tom Hanks, kind of the goofy, fun rom-com guy, and he cemented himself as that. Then he started to do more things like the one he came out with, A Man Named Otto, where he's a hard, crotchety old man. Well, that's not the same guy in Big. Well, yeah, it is the same guy in Big, and we just allow him more space to prove that. So I have one acting friend. I probably recommended 10 people take that course that did, and they loved it. It changed their career. And I had one who didn't. She felt like she was something that she wasn't portraying. And so she disagreed with some of the advice Sam was giving her. And I see exactly where Sam comes from. So, she just wasn't accepting of how the world perceived her. And that's hard to do, especially if there's things that don't resonate with you that that resonates with the world. So that's where the thick skin and the galvanized spirit comes in. So
the Nile's not just a river in Egypt, right?
That's right. I can tell you this much, Beau. I know every mistake that you're looking at right now. I know every crooked eye. My one ear sticks out further than the other. I know everything that's wrong with this face and this body. So I kind of M&M it. If you want to pick on me, go ahead, because I can dress myself down in front of you and take away every bit of ammo that you have. So I'm good, man. You go ahead. You go ahead and do whatever you do. Because at the end, I'm going to look at you and go, what's wrong with you? What's so broken in you that you had to break me down? Or what's so broken in you that you tried to break me down?
You hit that on the head, brother.
Yeah. So,
and that's what a lot of the questions I think need to be reflected when we're stuck in those situations for listeners. It's not so much oftentimes what's wrong with us, it's what's wrong with you. I live by this mantra. It's simply maintain integrity and limit my excuses. My acronym for it is SMILE. So I walk with a smile. And, I always try to do the things that I know in my heart are right. And I try to avoid the ones that I know are wrong. There's obviously always a gray area, but I try to walk on the side of righteousness, if you will. And the other part of that, too, I think, is having a support system behind you, which you, circling this back around to our last podcast, have an amazing wife that is your rock. How is she, by the way?
She's good. She's good. She's doing great, man. I mean, I think this last time we talked, she's grown her team where she works into, I think she might have had 2 or 3. She got 13. She's actually doing interviews today, hiring 2 new people. So she's grown her department into what was a one-person department for her for 3 years, and then now she's got 13. And I mean, I'm really proud of what she's done and what she's been doing. And yeah, man, it's pretty amazing what I've seen happen with her. And she's not really career-minded, goal like that, like I am. But to see what I've been forced into, but what's been kind of put on her and how she's taken it in stride is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, behind every great man, there's a great woman with their foot up your ass, right?
Yeah, she can definitely do that. But I wouldn't be anywhere I am without her support because, I mean, she's the core coach of my team. There's no doubt about that. I mean, she pushes me and gets me out of my comfort zone and makes sure that I'm doing the shit I need to be doing to get to the goals I want to get to. And that's just it too. A coach sits down with me like, what are your goals? These are your goals. Okay, cool. From here until the time you say stop, I'm going to push you as hard as I can push you toward the goals you set. Not me. You set them. You said you want to break a world record? Okay, let's go get it. Okay, but I don't want to get up today. You better get your ass up if you want to get that world record. Until is it there? Do you need to use a safe word? Are we done? Are we tapping out? Oh no, let's get up. So, but yeah, she's my Baney Roosters, I call her. She can get pretty feisty.
I almost want to ask what your safe word is, but yeah, I don't want to get too personal. So, can you tell us, I guess, anything coming up that you have coming out on the big screen?
Yeah, so it's been pretty quiet recently. The last thing that came out was 1883 and American Auto. I got those kind of back to back last year, but it's been pretty quiet. I got pretty close on man, I thought I had this one in the bag too, but they ended up going with a name. I had gotten down to being considered for one of the nephews in Righteous Gemstones, one of John Goodman's nephews, because his sister comes in this last episode or this last season here, and I think they're two brothers or two cousins of the or two nephews of John Goodman, and I actually read for both of them, but the one I really was looking for was Big Carl is his name, and I think they went with what's his name, Lucas Black maybe,
Mm.
or something Lucas. I'm getting it wrong now. I looked it up, but it looks like they chose to go with somebody with a name. But that was probably one of the bigger things here most recently that I was in line for. But it's been pretty quiet, and I think they started shutting things down pretty quick when they realized they were going to come to an agreement with the writing. So, but that being said, when things get settled, and they'll probably get settled pretty soon. I can't say I have any inside information. It's just that I think Hollywood doesn't want to. We just went through that with COVID. Really, it just knocked us down. So we really want to do that to ourselves. So I think something's going to get settled pretty soon. And with that, there's going to be this like dam bursting, if you will, of projects coming out. So things should pop off pretty quick. But going back to what you're asking on what's coming out, what I've really been focusing on.
Can I ask real quick before you finish your talking that?
Yeah.
Has COVID, all the time that we had off on COVID, were people working so that we have all these seeds ready to pop, like you were talking about the dams ready to burst? Or I guess how did that affect
I
us?
don't know if we've truly caught up to where things are kind of have flooded the market already. But I think a majority of that stuff that had been waiting has kind of started to come out, because we started shooting before the big COVID thing was over. Just before the American Auto thing, I had shot an episode of America's Got Talent, something like that, where I played. I kind of channeled Bob. Oh, damn, I can't remember his name. The painter guy.
Bob Ross.
Bob Ross, yeah. That was actually the instructions on the audition. Channel Bob Ross, and so that's kind of what I did. But that was the first gig I had once COVID had kicked in, and you know that we had masks, and when we had to shoot, I took the mask off when we shot, and everybody had the mask on. We put it back on, but I think that the big push from COVID and everything being held back kind of worked its way out through COVID, and then now it's I think they've kind of gotten through the big push there. So now what's happening is you're gonna have a big backlog, because what you've done with COVID is you had everybody consuming so much content. That's becoming the regular now. Like even me, I consume about 3 to 5 hours of content a day. That's kind of my night thing. So my work time at night is to watch stuff. And my wife and I'll stop it. We'll talk about a scene or talk about something about it. And right now we're about to run out of stuff. I know Jack Ryan's fixing to pop off on the 30th, and a few other new things. But I'm kind of finding the end of the streaming world, if you will, on quality stuff to watch. So that just tells me that they've kind of run out of things to launch, if you will. So I think this might be the second wave of kind of the COVID-like process of getting a whole bunch of things shot, so they can kind of flood the market with the content people I know are kind of aching, because nowadays with binge watching, I mean, it's I think to a point, I think it's kind of smart, kind of like Disney does. I think Apple does it too, where it's a weekly thing still. They don't dump it all at one time. And I think that's kind of keeping people on the hook a little bit, which I don't think is a bad idea from the studio side or the network side of things, because you run into that problem of, man, I mean, we have money in the coffers, but how much do we have to keep producing pretty much a feature film when it comes to 8 episodes or 10 episodes of the streamers at a time? So
Right.
I think it's going to end up finding a happy balance somewhere, but it's good that some of the streamers, I think, are holding things back. I think HBO Max does that too, or Max, I guess it's called now. Showtime does it. MGM Plus does it, the weekly things. I'm a big fan of The Godfather of Harlem with, who's it? You get names here. Goodness. Forrest Whitaker. Yeah. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a big push. And the other thing that's happening too is going back and forth between LA and Texas. Texas is definitely ramping up. They're building a couple new studios in Texas, 2 in Austin, 1 in Dallas. and trying to pull some of that, some of those projects to Texas themselves, because Texas was pretty big before I left about 23 years ago. And then they kind of stopped giving the incentives that they used to. And that's when the kind of Louisiana and New Mexico took things. And then Atlanta's just a supernova, if you will. I mean, I don't know if anybody can catch them, being basically the Hollywood of the East Coast. But it'd be cool to see Texas get some things going on, because really, ultimately, what I'd like to do is maybe build a studio of my own back in Texas and
Well,
get some things going there.
Austin, like you mentioned, seems to be popping. I know a lot of the industry bigs have moved out there, like Joe Rogan and a bunch of others. Um, so it only makes sense to start building the facilities so they don't have to do the commute. Uh, it just makes sense. With this whole COVID thing, or there was this push for remote work, and now we're pushing back to other things, or to more of a back on the job role, if you will. But with your voiceover work, now that the technology's finally gotten there, and after COVID, a lot of things came out to try to support some of the cracks that were in the system so that people could be more successful working remotely. I know locally our bandwidth went up quite a bit, upload speeds and download speeds, which actually helps quite a bit with streaming and all the rest.
Mhm.
Any tools that have kept you more at home rather than having to do that commute?
Yeah, you know what? Pretty much across the board, exclusively Hollywood, both on screen and VO is almost exclusively from home now. I can tell you, since COVID, what, almost 4 years, maybe 3.5 years of, let's say, I'm picking a number here, let's say 400 auditions, maybe 100 a year. 2 of them I've done in person. The other 398 have been from my home. And they call it on tape. We know tape doesn't exist anymore, but you put yourself on tape, if you will, and then you upload. There's some advantages and disadvantages to that. The biggest advantage is you get to do take after take until you get a perfect take. I'm an actor who doesn't mind, because I've directed myself and directed others, and I don't have a problem watching myself and seeing the problems, and even knowing in my head when I perform them, and shit, I need to go back and change that. But keep that. So go back and watch myself and go, okay, that was good. This wasn't. This is believable. Retake it, and then cut it together. That's the advantage. The disadvantage you have is, as a performer, you always want to perform in person live. But the biggest thing too is you want to build a camaraderie with the room, because a lot of times that's what they look at too, is, could I work with this guy? Would he be fun to work with? Would he be enjoyable? Would he be hard to work with? And when you can build that rapport, that instant rapport, which I think every actor should work on, it helps you in a way that just sending in a tape can't, because all they're going to see is the performance. You don't get to build that rapport. Hey, do 30 seconds of, hi, I'm Chris Warner, and this is who I am. They don't want to see that. They want to see the performance. So there's advantages. Sure. Does it save money? Sure. Does it save time? Absolutely. I mean, these are things that are helpful to both sides, right? But also in the negotiations now, SAG is working out, and I think it makes sense. Is now we have to be everything. Now we have to record ourselves, and we have to edit it, have to direct ourselves. So there's something that's being discussed in negotiations right now about how can we be compensated for that in some way, shape, or form, because basically we're working and not working, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and then in the VO space too, I mean, nobody, a lot of my friends who are, doing stuff on a regular basis aren't going into studio unless it's absolutely necessary for the director to be there. But it doesn't. You can do an ISD inline, or you can do a Zoom Connect and run. You can put it in your booth, run the Zoom. They can listen to you live and listen to the recording, direct you on the Zoom, get the cut they want. You send it to them in broadcast ready quality form, and all they do is use it. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, I've had friends who've had VO auditions used. They just hired them and said, no, you're good. We signed a contract. We're just going to use what you recorded to send us. It was perfect. They don't have to re-record it. So a lot of that's done that way. And, to be honest with you though, Beau, the voiceover is a small collective in and of itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What's funny out in LA is what I run across a couple times is, rather than use what's available now, I'm a 52-year-old man. I'm not gonna lie about my age. That's how old I am. But rather than use what you already hear. What they want to do is they want to break you down to the bedrock. They want you not to say truck. They want you to say truck, truck. And then they'll build you back up. Well, I kind of got into it with a couple coaches because my point is, look, let's work on truck. But while we're working on truck, since I'm an actor, where can I go get some work saying truck? Because here in Texas, if you want an F-150 truck, you're going to get an F-150 truck. You're not getting an F-150 truck. That's not what they're going to buy here. So, and, regional markets and stuff like that, a voice like I have is beneficial. And when I'm big as a performer and artist, I love authenticity. And so if you're from Boston and you can do an authentic Texas accent, cool, man. If I can believe you from down the street or whatever, cool. But if I can't, then you're not pulling your weight, if that makes sense. If I can't do a New York accent, which I can't, and I've worked on over the years, authentically, that you should pay me thousands or millions of dollars to do, then I probably shouldn't be in that role. But the VO space is very interesting. What is encouraging, though, is probably in the last 5 to 8 years, you probably heard this yourself, how they've allowed the voice of America or of the average Joe to come in, or the average lady to come in. What I mean by that is one I always pick is the spokesperson for AT&T is the VO of not the girl on screen, but the VO is an African American woman's voice. Or the guy for Wendy's, he's real high pitched like this, and come on down to Wendy's. These are multinational corporations, but they're allowing some flavor to come in, which again helps support the regional thing I was talking about. So we don't have plain vanilla white male voice across the world anymore. They're allowing some color and some flavor and some diversity in, which always made me question. I get learning from the ground up, but exclusively, I kind of tussle with some of my coaches on that. So probably since the last time I've talked to you, I've probably focused a little bit more on other things and of time and finances and stuff like that, of creating other things than going that way. But I have my booth set up, and I've kind of put it out there that I can produce broadcast quality voiceover for you whenever you need it. But for whatever reason, this voice, this tone, this timbre, whatever you want to call it, hasn't resonated with as many people as I would have hoped. Probably within the next year, what I'm looking at is getting my first auto demo reel done. There's a guy named Cliff Zellman who lives in Dallas he's kind of the auto demo reel dude of the United States. My buddy John Malone, who's done a lot of stuff, Marine Corps. He's currently on the Mercedes-Benz commercials and stuff like that. Just doing his first auto demo reel with Cliff. But that's probably what I'm looking to move into in the next 12 months is getting my auto demo reel up. And what's another thing is what's weird too with the voiceover business is, man, if you don't have that demo reel, whether it's auto or animation, corporate, these kind of things, most of the agencies and stuff won't even consider you, won't even look at you. Whether that be the talent agents, voiceover, or the ad agencies who they hire. So it's a game, man. It's truly a game. But if you go to my website, I've recorded some stuff, and you can hear me and my voice and Xbox One, things like that. Okay, I can do that for you. And then, all I can do is create the content I put out, and that's why really. And I'll kind of let you get back to what we're talking about, but really, that's why me and my buddy, I kind of pushed this issue with him. I wanted him to direct something of his own so he could be a part of that instead of being just kind of a frustrated writer pitching to people. And he really enjoyed it, but really convincing him, look, man, we've got to create idea to screen to produce content. All right. Because if we go the next year just writing and pitching to executives who buy nothing, then we've lost a year of our life not being artists. Just create some art. The big thing I noticed too about Hollywood is, and these executives that I pitch to is the word's not used, but the tone is perfection. Everybody literally is viewing you from a point of perfection. I'm like, well, one, have you watched shit on TV and at the movies? What I'm looking to do is create content. If I was able to get on these shows and TV and movies behind me, I think I'm good enough to probably produce something that someone would want to watch. But what they keep coming back to is the perfection of things, and I'm like, hmm, but art isn't perfection. Art's in the beholder's eye, if you will. And I know that there's an audience for my content. I know that there is. I can tell you who my avatars are right now. So what was happening, I think, a little bit is maybe Hollywood was getting between me and my audience. And what I said is, hey man, we're going to create some content and we're going to give it to the audience probably initially for free and see what they think. We're going to see if there's an audience out there for this, what they think there is. And then we'll go from there. I can't promise how that's going to work right now, but I think our idea is to create a kind of a central hub for this idea and put it online and see what people think initially and kind of market test it is kind of a way to do it. So.
I have a couple of people that I've met through the podcast that are kind of in similar boat as yourself. One is Iman Simone, or he's gonna forgive me if he ever listens to this. So Iman does a ton of supporting roles like yourself. He also has done some animation and voiceover work and started something called Momo's America that you can find on YouTube. But then I also have uh, Connor. What's his last name? I'm so horrible with last names. So Connor does voiceover work, has been on my show a lot lately, but he was like a child actor on Little House on the Prairie and a lot of really great stories. And he's just did like the Chevy F-150 commercial, and just like a ton of voiceover work, everything from um, video games to cartoons to, and he has such a knowledgeable history regarding voiceover, just the history thereof. I've been
Mhm.
pushing him to try to get his connections together because no one's really ever documented the voiceover actor um, history as much, in my opinion. And so, all these people are starting to pass away, and Connor brings to the table these really great stories, with like Bela Lugosi and just old actors and the behind the scenes stuff that you normally wouldn't hear about, because they're working, doing radio work or the old plays on radio kind of thing, what do they call that?
Like um, theater, what is it?
Radio theater or something.
Yeah, like radio theater kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I think it's interesting because there's not a lot of recognition. Usually, if you have the pretty face, those are the ones that get all the attention. But man, all the cartoons I grew up with had a voiceover actor, And so, anyways, uh, what I'm saying, or where I was alluding to some of that, is it's amazing the tools in the toolbox, and for you creating the content for Hollywood to come to you and let the people see what you can do rather than being roadblocked by Hollywood, I think is definitely the way to go. And, nowadays you can release the stuff like I'm in, on YouTube. It doesn't cost anything other than to obviously produce it. And if you can get a market developed, and launch from there, that seems to be awesome. That seems like a great idea. Like you pushed out all those products behind you, and you've done some amazing stuff. Um, One thing I've never heard you talk about is if you've ever written a book or if you've ever thought about it, because I think, there's a lot of nuggets of wisdoms there that would be good for future generations, whether that's on a blogging post or, like a book. Thought about that?
Funny that you mentioned, I've actually written two books. They're both on Amazon right now if you want. One's called the Master Your Confidence, and another one's called Live Bully Proof. It was basically because of the confidence thing. What's funny is you can't, when you sell something or market something generally, you have to sell the need, not the want,
Right.
because the want won't sell. And I kept talking about confidence. That's why I wrote the first book. It's basically just like 33 kind of nuggets, as you said, nuggets of wisdom on how to build confidence. And when you come from the more positive side, and it's crazy, our psyche won't allow us to chase. It's like It's easier to run from the bad than run after the good, if that makes sense. So I was working with a coach at the time, and the confidence thing just wasn't, it didn't resonate. It just wasn't resonating. And so, like, how can you write it from a negative perspective? I mean, that's kind of the way it was presented. I'm like, well, people without confidence, lack confidence, tend to be bullied a lot in life. And my belief is if you build confidence, bullying virtually disappears. Virtually. I'm not saying it completely disappears, but most people that bully you will just choose not to. They won't even broach the subject because you're too positive. You're too much for them. Like me, I'm like, go ahead, and knock yourself out. Go ahead, and try to pick on me. We're good. And be like, well, yeah, we're good, man. I'm okay. So if you're that confident, the bullies just go away. Um, so I chose to write a book. I call it Bully Proof. Live Bully Proof is what I call it. And it's basically because people would ask me, "Hey, Chris, why are you so confident? How did you get so confident?" And I had to kind of deconstruct how it happened because I learned this. I told you way back in competitive sports days when I was a kid. You're not documenting how you're becoming confident as a kid, right? So I had to go back and kind of analyze that, and then this is one way, Bo. There's many ways to get up the mountain. This is one way. I'm not saying it's the end all be all how to do it, but I got like a 5-step process I put in there on how basically to become bully proof. If you did these 5 things every day over a period of time, let's say a year, let's give it a year. At the end of that year, you'd be a completely different person if you stuck to these 5 things. And they aren't hard. They're fairly simple. But yeah, that book's out on Amazon right now if somebody want to buy it. But it's a pretty simple process. And I give some situations of when I was bullied, as a youngster, and also give some statistics like suicide rates and things like that I utilize to give people who may not have hope or some hope on things can change for you. Um, so yeah, those are 2 books that relate to kind of the badass umbrella, if you will, um, of nuggets of wisdom that would help them um, maybe just get started or start thinking about how to become more confident so they can move forward toward their purpose of being the badass original that I know they're on. And then in
Absolutely.
reference to that, probably more talking to the future, that's what's going to happen from now on is whether they're called blog posts or uh, whether you just see posts on my social on a daily basis, starting to create content toward that, starting to create a fire where people who are cold in their spirit can start to get warm. And the warmer you get, well, who denies the power of the sun? Nobody does because it's the hottest thing in our solar system, right? And that's what I like people to build from. So yeah, it'll probably be, you can go check those things out, but it'll probably be more in the future that I'm looking to try to give people nuggets of wisdom, if you will, or a beacon to move toward when it comes to building confidence. Because if you don't have confidence, moving toward a goal and a dream and a badass original life is going to be hard. I mean, that's pretty much your foundation is building your confidence first
Yeah.
because you're going to take a bunch of shit trying to go to that. And if you don't have any confidence, the first pile of shit slung at you is just going to move you. You're going to put you back in your hole. So, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity here to kind of discuss that initially because we're close and I was on a podcast a few weeks ago talking about this, but yeah, trying to get the word out there to folks that Badass Original is on its way. And I've been talking about it for a minute. I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna start launching some stuff and getting the word out there and hopefully it just resonates with folk. Uh, and as I refer to folks who do kind of hover around the fire as Badass Nation. So um,
On an underlier, you're dealing with kind of mental health, or at least trying to help with mindset and mental health. They kind of go hand in hand. And tying it back to something I said earlier to you, I've been working on this mental health series. And so as we bring this to a close, I wanted to ask you insights on what you're seeing in terms of state of mental health, both in the industry, but also because you have your finger on the pulse a little bit with veterans, where things are at there as well. That would help me with the other things that I've been working on.
well, well, again, I guess I'll put this unofficial disclaimer out there. I'm not a mental health professional at all, but I do probably a little more surfing than I should on social to see what's happening in the world without going and watching the news itself. But it does concern me a bit of the boys that are being raised into men right now in general. And I don't want to make that too blanket of a statement, but it concerns me. And in that sense, too, seeing where the military is, I have a few friends who are still active duty or reservists, and some of the constraints they're actually trickling down from up high through the military. Some of the things that are becoming lax that weren't. Well, part of the military is to create disciplined individuals. I won't say show, but disciplined individuals who are confident and dedicated to a cause. Well, if you start taking some of those things that form that, and some of it are restrictions and demands, you start taking those demands away, all you're making is a weaker individual, in my personal opinion. I mean, the only way somebody is, again, going to become stronger is through resistance. Muscle doesn't become stronger without resistance. Cause doesn't become bigger or more loud without resistance. When you start taking the barriers away, making it comfortable to go somewhere, nobody wants to go anywhere. So it is interesting to me to see a lot of the young men today not even having a purpose, if that makes sense. And I see some of these Johnny on the street guys who'll ask some people questions, and they're either no answer or such a generalized, non-offending answer that tells me instantly this person doesn't have any confidence and doesn't see or feel like they have a purpose. So then there becomes a point in these young folks' lives, and I haven't done a lot of research on this, but I'm understanding you're getting, teenagers and young adults who want to commit suicide because they don't feel like there's any reason to live. There's no purpose out there to live. And I believe if we would introduce some of that competitive resistance that I was talking about, putting them in a sport or something at 10 or 12, 8, 13, something like that, they would have learned that the only way that you're going to get stronger is to build calluses. And then when you do that, something happens in your psyche that I think gives you a purpose. You have a starting point. The old saying goes, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right? Well, they never learned a something. So whatever they hear next is whatever they're following to a point, which is concerning, because if that next thing is, hey, there's a cliff over here, we'd like you to walk off, they just do it without questioning anything. And I appreciate questioning authority, but I also appreciate taking a 30,000-foot view of everything that's happening. And I don't necessarily think there's enough of the questioning at 30,000 feet. And then if you don't question it, then again, nothing's going to galvanize you. And you're going to start to move toward anything. And then you're going to hit a point that nothing matters. And then unfortunately, you're going to want to not be around anymore. And it's pretty sad. It's real sad to see that. And maybe I'll start, maybe you planted a seed here, Beau, that maybe that's some of what I talk about. Because the last thing I'll mention, and I know we got to wrap it up here, is I'm looking to start a podcast too, in addition to some of this stuff. And the name of the podcast is going to be Lock, Stock, and Badass. And what I mean by that is anything that we talk about is going to be under the badass realm of moving toward being a badass original, whether it's being a badass actor, a badass business owner, a badass podcaster. I can have guests on my show, and sometimes we'll just talk about a subject. But if this is someplace, the badass, and if they want to become a member of the Badass Nation, all I got to do is listen in. And if I can provide a nugget for them in some way, shape, or form, I'll do my best. But what I think there does have to be is there has to be a surrender to resistance if you want to become confident in life. You have to surrender to shit being hard. It's just going to be hard. You just have to be stronger. I mean, don't wish for it to, what is the old saying go? Don't wish for things to be easier. Wish to be stronger so you can overcome those things. And then they become easy to you because you've become stronger. But to not work to become strong at all, that's one I'm still wrapping my head around, Beau. I can't understand it, because I think I was taught to be tough through life early on. So I don't have a reference before that. So I'm not sure to understand it, which it doesn't mean I can't learn to understand it. Yeah, I think putting folks in those situations.
There's lessons that they're just missing out on that are important lessons that are reverberating in other ways. And I absolutely agree. It's we've coddled our people for a long time, and we're seeing the results of that. And, you know, with our political system, that's another aspect of mental health that we've been looking at on the show with the experts. And it's interesting how they break it apart. Really, all things kind of come down to simple, basic dynamics that you can look at, through the lens of like a family or a dysfunctional family. Um, you know, and it doesn't change because people are people no matter where you go. That's one of the big takeaways that I've gotten from doing these series. And as a result, we just need to become better as people. And I think it's mindsets, and I think it's the tools in the toolbox and planting the seeds. And if I planted one today, hey, I'm happy for it. Because it's amazing what happens when you just whether it's content creation or going out in your community and making the ripples in the pond, they reverberate, and that's what makes life worth living, in my opinion. Uh, so yeah, I do have to wrap this up, Chris. Man, I'll tell you, I'd love to touch base again down the road, brother, and I will be looking for you to follow through, which I know you will, on this podcast idea, because I think those nuggets of wisdom, count me one of the first members, if you will, of your badass nation. I know you already have a bunch, but in terms of your podcast, yeah, I think that's great. The network that you also bring to the table is going to open up a lot of doors, and that like-mindedness is just going to bring like-minded people together. And I know there's a lot of us out there, so I appreciate you. I'm going to put links in the description for all the stuff that we talked about today, including the 2 books that you've written. I didn't realize that, so my bad on the faulty research on that. But
No, man, hey, it's all good. I don't really promote them. I mean, because um, even promoting them didn't have, the point being is that the tool is there to use, and I may start to reintroduce those if I go on the podcast on the content. Hey, if you need some help with confidence, start here, and then give me a shout if you need it. But no, I appreciate you putting that out there, man, because I think they're worth something to somebody, because you know it took a lot of life to come up with the content for them, that's for sure. And like I said
yeah,
earlier, I use the phrase of getting punched in the throat, kicked in the balls. Yeah, I mean that's going to happen to you. The big thing is, how do you overcome that? Right?
yeah. Do you have any different links other than what we used for the last podcast that you would like me to attach to this one?
No, right now, what I really try to do is create a general hub for folks so they don't have to go searching for me everywhere. But the general, if you go to the Chris Warner, TheChrisWarner.com, I try to do my best to keep that up to date, and also to put all the links of my social there. But you can also find me at the Chris Warner on Instagram, the Chris Warner on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. I think it's Chris Warner Actor. And Twitter, I think, is Warner Inc. or the Chris Warner as well. Or those are the places you can come find me. But the big place is the Chris Warner, and I try to put everything there. So if you want to spot her out from that, um, yeah, feel free, most definitely. But I appreciate everybody's support, encouragement. Uh, Life's a long road to hoe, right? And
Yeah,
if we don't
ain't
help
it
each
though?
other out, man, it's going to be a tough one. I mean, it's a tough one already, but it's very cool, when you hit a knee and you feel a brother's hand on your shoulder, knowing that they're there to lift you up. I mean, it's important. It's important to have
Yeah,
folks in your life that help you when you need it, and encourage you when you need it, because life's hard, man. It is hard. There's no doubt about it. But it was meant to live ultimately. So yeah.
yeah. No, it's a test, and when we die, we get graded. So I'd like to try to ace that test as much as possible. I don't mind the adversity sometimes. I think after you get used to it, you learn to thrive in it. Those challenges, if you will, doesn't always have to be radical challenges. It can just be everyday challenges. But you get to a point where you know you have the tools in your toolbox, and you start to learn to enjoy, you know, beating the beast, which is really what it comes down to. There's not much these days that comes my way that I can't handle, and I'm sure, I'm definitely sure that that's true, probably doubly for you. So, well, hey, I appreciate you. I wish you, your wife, and the family all the best, and I'll reach out again, and we'll do this again in maybe another year or two. Sound great?
Sounds good, boy. I appreciate the time, man.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate you. You have yourself a great day, buddy.
You take care.
This has been Digital Voices with Beau Tiffany, exploring deep stories from real-life guests with real-life experiences, providing insight to our listeners with every story. Stay up to date on future podcasts by bookmarking Digital Voices with Beau Tiffany.podbean.com and follow Beau on social media by searching Digital Voices with Beau Tiffany. Have an idea for a future story? Send your idea to acrmadison@gmail.com. Until next time, grab life by the horns and keep inspiring others.